Oh, hello, 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 hello. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to talk about what I think may be Elon Musk's greatest mistake in running Tesla. Elon's greatest mistake, Tesla's greatest mistake, is starting up Giga Berlin. So this is the Giga Berlin factory. That's like an artist's rendition of the Giga Berlin factory. But Tesla built a very, very large factory in Berlin. In my opinion, that factory has massively underperformed for a variety of reasons we're going to talk about. We'll talk about what Tesla could have done better. And I think this is one of those things when you wonder, like, why isn't Tesla stock up more? Like, why hasn't Tesla done more? Leaving aside FSD and Optimus, what's happened that's stopped Tesla from succeeding? And Giga Berlin is just massively underperformed. So let me show you about that. Before we dive into that, just really quick, if you are a YouTube channel member or you are an ex-subscriber, supporter on the Daily Lie, or supporter on Patreon, I have some videos that are for supporters only. The latest one is about Tesla options. I've changed my Tesla option strategy related to my next video. My next video is going to talk about what I think is going to happen to Tesla stock over the next year. That video will be for everyone. But related to that, given what I see happening with Tesla stock, I changed my option strategy. So if you'd like to see my option strategy videos, please support me as a YouTube channel member, as an ex-subscriber on the Daily Lie, or Patreon as a supporter on those platforms. So the first thing about Giga Berlin, and my opinion that it was a mistake, is hindsight is 2020. It's easy for me in 2025 to say Giga Berlin in 2021 was a bad decision, right? Because looking at it now, I know things that they didn't know then. So that's not necessarily fair. Hello, Brian. Hello, Mark. And hello, Lost in the Philippines. Lots of good people here. So look, I'm not smarter than Elon. And I thought it was a good idea. I'm not there's this trend that happens with content creators like me, but not me, who we start to think we're smarter than we really are. We start to think we're smarter than Elon, we're smarter than the Tesla team, and we think, oh, Tesla's doing things wrong, they should have done it differently. When they announced Giga Berlin in, I think it was 2021, I thought it was a great idea. I was supportive, I was excited about it, and I think a lot of things went wrong we can talk about. I'm going to talk about some alternatives to Giga Berlin, but I think we should recognize that there's a value in geographic diversity, right? So Tesla invested in Giga Shanghai, Tesla invested in the United States, and Tesla invested in Europe, the three largest car markets. If Tesla had not invested in Europe, what if something had gone wrong in China? What if something went wrong in the US? Tesla does want to have multiple factories in multiple parts of the world. So if something goes wrong in one part of the world, you're better. So the Ukraine war happens. They couldn't have known that was going to happen. Maybe China has a war with Taiwan, and then Giga Berlin would have outperformed Giga Shanghai. We don't know. And the future is not determined yet. Maybe Europe will improve. I don't think Europe looks good. I don't think the future of Europe looks good. But maybe it will improve, and this will turn out to be a good decision. So let's talk about what went wrong. And I should just stress, let me just stress this. I'm going to skip ahead in my notes. Giga Berlin is over here. The CapEx, the amount that Tesla invested to build Giga Berlin, was around $5 billion US dollars. I think it may have actually been more than that when you get done with everything. It may have been $6-8 million. Hello, B. And they produced I have $700,000 in cars, 700,000 cars produced since 2022. Compare that to Giga Shanghai, which had a lower capital investment and has produced 4 million cars, right? So Giga Shanghai has kicked butt and Giga Berlin has not. If the average selling price is $45,000, you get total revenue here of in the ballpark of $30 billion. And then Giga Berlin has lower margins because they're not producing at full capacity, because there's higher labor costs, there's lots of problems. So I think Giga Berlin has probably generated about $3 billion in gross profit, which is less than the CapEx to build it. So it really hasn't returned its investment yet. Where you compare, Giga Shanghai has generated about $30 billion in gross profit on a $2 billion investment. So Giga Shanghai was like gangbusters. But this is the point. This is the problem with Giga Berlin. It's not producing the volume of cars that we hoped. It's not It's been very, very difficult to ramp in a variety of reasons. I don't have numbers for Giga Texas here. I don't think Giga Texas isn't really relevant because Giga Texas is a lot more than just cars. I thought about that question. So number one, they make Model Y. Number two, they were looking at making Model Y. They make the 4680 cell in Giga Texas. They have the um, Cortex AI data center at Giga Texas. They have the cathode factory at Giga Texas. They have the nearby lithium refinery in Giga Texas. They make Cybertruck in Giga Texas. So Giga Texas, and they have a lot of offices, a lot of like the company headquarters is Giga Texas. So it's not really one-to-one factory to factory. Giga Shanghai to Giga Berlin is one-to-one. Um, so, um, so what went wrong? So early on, and even today, there was a local opposition to Giga Berlin being built. They're going to cut down some trees. They're going to use water. There's all these complaints. I think these complaints were largely driven by fake environmental groups that were funded by Tesla's competition, by Volkswagen or German auto manufacturers or others. And then just the communists that have infected Europe. We have communists infecting the United States too, but the communists infecting Europe are worse. And so there was like all kinds of environmentalists and other things. And then you have your bureaucracy and labor issues. The labor rules, like Tesla, if I wanted to hire somebody from another car company, they had to like sit them for a year before they could start. The labor costs are high. The bureaucratic hassles dealing with the European Union, the European Commission, the German whatever, the German province. There's all these different hoops they had to jump through. That, you know, in China's like, we're going to build a factory. China's like, go. Texas, you're going to build a factory. All right, go. Europe is like, wait, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. You know what? All these problems. Europe's economy has been weak for a variety of reasons, including the Ukraine war, a whole bunch of other problems. Electricity prices are up, and that makes partly because of the Ukraine war and the conflict with Russia, but the electricity prices are up, and Germany shut down some nuclear plants. So with electricity prices up, one of the big advantages of a Tesla is reduced or gone away because filling up a gas tank is about the same as charging your car at home. So that's like kind of a strike that hurts. A lot of people think Elon man bad, that Elon's outspokenness on politics has hurt Tesla's brand. I would say differently. There are politicians, this happens in America too, this happens everywhere. There are politicians and media who really support the German car manufacturers. And any excuse they can to crap on Tesla, they're going to crap on them. Same thing happens in America. Does the average European really care if Elon says he likes this political party or he doesn't? There should be migrant. Like, what about all the people who don't want all the migrants in Europe? Are they buying more Teslas? I don't really buy the Elon man bad argument, but I asked Grok and Grok bought it. So there's some people who believe that Elon has turned off some consumers. I would just say, well, then didn't he turn on some other consumers who like his positions? I don't know. Another one is that Model Y is too big, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. Is Model Y too big for the European market? Is it too expensive for the European market? Maybe that's an issue. And then also just the high cost structure of operating in Germany means that the margins are lower, so they make less profit. So those are some of the things that went wrong with Giga Berlin. 5 is self-inflicted. His op-ed for the AfD was really bad and negatively impacted German views on Tesla. You say that, but the AfD has a big following. So why didn't the AfD fans buy Teslas? This argument, this is 14.4 in the chat saying that, well, it's a self-inflicted wound because Elon. So first of all, look, Elon's going to say what Elon's going to say. If you are new to Tesla, you're new to Elon Musk, he has always been a controversial figure who will say controversial things. It's not because he says controversial things. It's because the media and the politicians in Europe see an opportunity to attack someone which benefits the people who support them. You want to believe it's Elon's fault, right? Because you're smarter than Elon, right? That's what's really going on. You're smarter than Elon. You know what's going on. No, it doesn't matter what he does. They'll attack him because he's a billionaire. They'll attack him because his plant is using electricity. They'll attack him because his plant is using water. It might be using less electricity and less water than a BMW plant next door, But they'll attack Elon because they're going to go after Elon because they support BMW. You want to believe Elon is the reason for this problem because you want to believe it. Elon man bad is an easy scapegoat because it's not easily quantifiable. Exactly. Now, I'm not saying it's zero. I'm just saying I don't think it's like, and again, if you believe, like, the AFD is a popular party, if you believe Elon saying something positive about the AFD party in Germany is a bad thing with the people who don't like AFD, why wouldn't the people who like AFD buy more cars, buy more Teslas? Wouldn't that offset it to some extent? They never count that. If Elon says something positive about Trump, oh, Democrats aren't going to buy Teslas anymore. So Republicans are going to buy more? No, Republicans won't buy more. So Democrats aren't going to buy better cars, but Republicans won't buy, like, it doesn't make any sense. But I'm not, again, there's something. There would not be any opportunity, but he is the one who opened his mouth. See, again, 14.4, you're not getting it. It doesn't matter what he says. He's a billionaire. They hate billionaires. It doesn't matter. They will find something. If you've been following Tesla for as long as I've been following Tesla, and you've been following SpaceX as long as I've been following SpaceX, the media always says bad things about Tesla and SpaceX. If there's a car crash where a BMW rear ends a Tesla, the headline, Tesla crash. A Ford gets involved in a crash with a BMW. There was a car crash. Right? The Tesla cannot be in fault. There's a fire. A tanker truck lights on fire, and the roof of the Tesla is on fire. Oh, Tesla battery fire. The battery isn't in the roof. They constantly lie about Tesla. They'll find another thing to say bad things about Tesla. They'll find another thing to say bad things about Elon. You imagine that there's something Elon can do to behave better, and then they won't be mean to him. You're just not paying attention. Oh, I'm not wearing I'm wearing my Tesla Air t-shirt. I was wearing my Idiocracy t-shirt yesterday. Having a beachhead for Cybercab could be huge. Maybe. I don't think that matters. Czech Republic might have been a better location. I'm going to talk about some alternatives in a minute. And then just generally the high cost structure made things difficult. Okay, so let's talk about some alternatives. I'm not going to mention Czech Republic, but you could include it in number 2. So I showed you before, look at Giga Berlin versus Giga Shanghai. Giga Shanghai was a spectacular investment. So maybe Tesla could have taken the CapEx that they put into Giga Berlin and they could have invested more in China to get more manufacturing, maybe do the Megapack factory earlier or do a bigger Megapack factory. Maybe build Cybertruck. I'm just giving you examples. I don't think Cybertruck's really the answer, but they could have invested more in China instead of investing in Europe. China has been gangbusters, a spectacular return on investment. So had they invested $2 billion more in China, right, and they made the factory double the size, would they have been able to increase volume, lower costs? Could they have built more supply chain in China with the investments and lowered their costs in some ways? Is there something they could have done in China that would have made China even more effective? Maybe. They don't control him and it makes them mad. They hate him it doesn't matter. They hate Zuckerberg, they hate Bezos, they hate people they don't like. They hate rich people. So then another idea I mentioned, somebody mentioned Czech Republic. So I'm going to say Giga Serbia or Giga Poland. The reason I specifically mentioned Serbia is not a European Union nation. So less bureaucracy because of that. Poland, also less bureaucracy. They have lower labor costs. Czech Republic, probably also lower labor costs. I got a couple others we'll talk about. Giga Osaka. I've been pumping Giga Osaka for I stopped talking about it. I thought Tesla should have built a factory in Osaka. Panasonic is a key supplier to Tesla. Panasonic is in Osaka, Japan. If Tesla had built Giga Osaka and they built, we're going to talk about new models in a minute, they built cars for the Japanese market. We'll talk about that in a second. Giga Thailand, I don't think there's a compelling case for Giga Thailand, but I'll talk about it. New models, everybody wants Tesla to do different models. If they had invested money, the same CapEx they put in Berlin into making different models, maybe that would have made a difference. And then I don't have a specific slide for this last one, but sales and service. I'm here in Thailand. I live 800 kilometers, 500 miles south of Bangkok, and I bought a Model Y. We had to fly to Bangkok and drive it down. I have a friend here who has a Model 3, and he had a warranty repair, and Tesla trucked it up. But once they finished the repair, they said, you got to come get it. So he had to pay to have it. He chose to pay to have it trucked down. I would have just flown up and driven it down. But um, so with Tesla opened a sales and service center in Phuket, Thailand, which is like a 2-hour drive from here, or here in Krabi, so we'd have access to Phuket and Surat Thani. Like Krabi might be a good central location. I think BYD has like 40 or 100 sales locations in Thailand. What if Tesla had invested that cap? And Tesla doesn't have many sales locations in Japan. What if Tesla had identified places where they could sell more vehicles if they had more sales and service locations? I think the US is pretty well covered, but I think there's other countries where, like Thailand, like Malaysia, like Japan, where Tesla could have invested money. And there's a reason why I think they don't do that, which is if you're going to transition to robotaxi world and you're going to stop selling your cars to consumers, that CapEx in opening up these sales centers, they probably didn't generate a return on investment, in 3 years when you stop selling cars. And maybe they're useful for your robotaxi fleet. I don't know. But the robotaxi fleet isn't going to be in Thailand, and I'm not even sure it's going to be in Japan. It's going to be in the US and China and maybe in Europe. And then I think it'll be in Japan as well. Thank you, R.W. Hirsch. So I covered the Giga Shanghai thing. Let me just talk about Poland, Serbia, Hungary was another option. You have lower labor costs. You have less regulatory hassles. There's good supply. I mean, there's good supply chain in Germany as well, but there's good supply chain in Poland. There's good supply chain in Hungary. They have manufacturing there. Serbia is tricky because Serbia is not in the EU, so that's a plus and a minus. You'd think it's a minus because of tariffs or other non-tariff barriers, but because it's an emerging market, the EU has given Serbia good access. So Serbia has very low labor costs, a lot lower regulatory burden, not regulated by the EU. So that could have been a really good option. Just examples, like if you're going to do in Europe, then those might have been better choices. They need to make small. We're going to talk about new models in a minute. Osaka, Panasonic is a key supplier of batteries to Tesla, and they're in Osaka. Hiro Mizuno was on the Tesla board, and he's like super connected with the Japanese political structure and ministries. So he could have helped set up Giga Osaka. If they had built a factory in Osaka or in Japan, the Japanese have been reluctant to adopt EVs. They're not particularly excited about Tesla. But if they had actually built a factory and employed workers and built a network in Japan, would that have unlocked the Japanese market, which is like the next largest market after Europe? I think that they might have increased because they've never really cracked Japan, and I think that might have cracked Japan open, and then they would have sold a lot of cars. And Japan's a relatively wealthy market; people can afford cars like Teslas. Maybe that would have been an unlock, and Tesla would have sold a lot more cars in Japan. Japan, they drive on the left-hand side of the road compared to right-hand side in America, so Japan would have been a good location to export to Australia and Hong Kong. They wouldn't have had to change the lines over in China to manufacture cars for the wrong side of the road. Maybe Japan would have been a better place to ship cars to Taiwan, to Thailand, where we drive on the left side of the road. I can just see where there might have been better choices, right? Great engineers in Japan, cheap. The labor cost is low. I was looking at hiring, like a starting engineer in Japan makes like $30,000 a year. In America, it's like 100. Europe, there's all kinds of their Japanese labor market regulations can be a hassle, but they're not as bad as Europe. And then Japanese workers have a fantastic work ethic. They're not, the European workers are taking all these vacations. You tell the Japanese workers you're going to be competing with Giga Shanghai, and they're going to go all in. They want to beat China. Like you tell them we want Giga Osaka to be more productive than Giga Shanghai. That they're going to work their asses off to you set them a goal like that, they're going to go all in. So that I think that's a thing I think might have been a better choice. It's not as geographically diverse because it's right next door, but I think it's relatively stable. Giga Thailand, there's an area called Rayong that's southeast of Bangkok and south of Pattaya. The Southeast Asian market is actually larger than the Japanese or Indian markets when you combine it. So if they had built in Thailand, would that have given them favorable access to Malaysia, Vietnam? I don't know. Cambodia is kind of a not a great situation right now. Singapore, um, Philippines, Indonesia. Could it have unlocked those markets a little bit more? And then Giga Thailand would have been a great exporter for that. Labor's super low cost in Thailand. Minimum wage is $10 a day. Um, and Thailand, I know people see stories about this, fight with Cambodia, but that's like affecting a very small part of Thailand. There's some conflict related to Myanmar, very small, not really a big deal. Thailand is a low conflict nation. Europe's got all this conflict going on. Japan so far low conflict, but they just rubbed China the wrong way, so who knows? So I don't know that Giga Thailand was really a serious option, but it might have worked. And I don't know. It could have been. I don't know anything could have been worse than Giga Europe, than Giga Berlin. And then the last thing I'll mention is new models. A lot of us, even me, we're smarter. We have smarter than Elon disease. Tesla needs a smaller car. Tesla needs a bigger car. We now have a Model YL in China. Could we have had the Model YL earlier? Could Model YL be sold in more places? I don't think Model YL is selling in as much volume as people think. A Model Y S, a smaller Model Y, if you could get 20% of the cost out and sell that thing for, you know, $5,000, $10,000 less, um, you could really compete with a lot. There's a lot of places where they want a smaller vehicle. Could you make it, 2 inches, 5 centimeters narrower, a little shorter, easier to fit in parking spots, easier to handle on small streets? Mirek Klusek says, you're forgetting they're all third world countries. People can hardly afford food. Southeast Asia has a lot of cars. Thailand is the number 2 pickup truck market. Like, you'd be shocked if you came to Thailand and how many pickups you'd see. Ford Ranger is super popular. I think it's the number 5 selling vehicle is Ford Ranger. There's a lot of cars in Thailand. There's a lot of cars in Malaysia. There's a lot of cars in Vietnam. There's a lot of cars in Indonesia. I think you're confusing the Southeast Asian countries I'm talking about with India, where they can't afford Teslas. People buy Teslas here. So no, they can afford, if you got the cost out, you could sell a lot. So I think a Model Y S, what stopped Tesla from doing a Model Y S? What stopped Tesla from doing a Model Y L earlier? I would love to see a Model Y XL for America because Americans have bigger butts. But seriously, like a legit, a larger Model Y that's, longer than a model, as long as a Model X, but more space efficient, and you get, a legit 7-seat vehicle with some extra cargo room in the back. Americans would love that. I don't know that they could have done better on pickup trucks than what they've done. Nobody has succeeded in making a great EV pickup yet. Like, not profitably. Like, Rivian makes a nice EV pickup, but they're losing tons of money. I've seen the Chinese pickups in the Bangkok Auto Shows, and they're like, 100 miles range. Like, it's really hard to make a good pickup. It's harder than people realize to make a good pickup. Cybertruck's actually a really good effort. It just costs too much. So, are there other models? A van, right? 'Cause the large vans are popular in China and Thailand and other countries. I don't think they're as popular in America, the minivans, but they're popular in Asia. They're not drivers' cars, but rich people in these countries pay a driver, so they don't care. Um, so, could they have taken the $5 billion in CapEx and put that into, okay, let's do an extra line for a Model Y. Model Y S would have sold in high volume. A Model Y L, maybe you just run that on what they're doing now in China, but you could have had a Model Y L in the US and maybe that would sell. I don't know the reasons why. We don't know why Tesla didn't do this, but we know Tesla committed CapEx and engineering resources in a lot of ways to open up Giga Berlin, and it's been massively underperforming. So creating these other vehicles might have unlocked something else. 14.4 says small vehicle concern would be the price of the embedded hardware for FSD adds to it. Yeah, but the FSD hardware, AI3 and AI4 hardware are cheap. Advancing car production is no longer the focus. Yes, Tesla agree. I agree with that, but we're talking about a decision that was made in 2021. When the decision was made in 21 to open Giga Berlin, they were trying to increase car production. That's why they built a car factory, right? So I think that I'm not saying today they should somehow magically get back the $5 billion they put into, or $8 billion they put into Giga Berlin and do these things. I'm saying if you go back to 2021 and you made these decisions instead, and I'm not saying specifically the new models, but all these variety of decisions that we talked about, would any of those have been a better choice? And like when you're looking at it today, it's a lot easier to say that. Would you have seen it if you were in 2021? Could Tesla, like, I think if Tesla saw how bad Europe was going to be, maybe they wouldn't have built Giga Berlin. I think. I think if they had a do over, they wouldn't have invested that money. Um, oh, there's a launch coming up. Hello, Karsten. Thanks for joining us. Japan collapsing. I don't think Japan is collapsing. I think Japan is having some economic issues, but Japan has been having economic issues for a very long time. Um, so I don't think there's anything new there. Which location might be good for building chips other than the US? For building chips, you mean a terafab? I think that if they're going to build a fab, it's going to be in the US. That's the only place they'll build a fab. I don't think they're going to build a fab anywhere else. I think for national security reasons, export controls, whatever, I don't think they're going to build a fab anywhere else. It would be interesting if they built a fab in China, though, wouldn't it? Forland says the reason Elon wanted factory in Germany is he wanted to win the auto factories in their own field. That's not a good reason. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not a good reason. China sales beating German sale are getting closer. Oh, the stock is out? I didn't even look at the stock price. Let's check the stock price out. Is it open? Is the market open? I think the market opens in like 5 minutes. Right? Well, we'll keep going until we see what happens with the stock market. Let me just check the chat here. Yeah, small vans. Like, could they have made a small delivery van type vehicle? What else could they have done? Yes. Forland says Serbia is not part of the EU, just so you know. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point. They could have, if they had built a factory in Serbia. We happened to fly through Serbia on our way from Greece to maybe it was from Italy to Greece. We flew through Serbia and we had to you know, we were on we were on like European visas and we had to go through immigration again because I didn't realize that Serbia wasn't part of Schengen. But that means there's less regulation and they do have favorable access to European markets anyway. So, seems like Tesla could just put steering wheel pedals and different paint on Cybercab and you would have your small car. I love when people say this, B. That I don't know if you're watching Farzad. Maybe you're watching a little too much Farzad. But here's the reality of that. No one buys two-seater cars. I don't care if you put a seater in a steering wheel in a Cybercab. People don't buy. Name a two-seat car that's sold in high volume anywhere. In the United States, at least. I don't think two-seat cars have sold well anywhere. So you'd have to put a second row of seats. Well, now you're talking about some serious changes. You're not just talking about small changes. You're talking about serious changes to the vehicle. But I think rather than that, they could have just, like I said, a Model Y S. Now your engineering is just make it a little shorter, make it a little narrower, make battery pack a little smaller. Probably would have been pretty easy to re-engineer the Model Y as a Model Y S. The small van for last mile delivery would have been a candidate for U.S. Postal Service and others. I wouldn't have trusted government. I think it's just a practical reality. There's a lot of delivery businesses out there that love small vans. It's called the what is it called? The Sprinter vans. I think that might have been a viable business. And maybe I don't know if consumers would have bought that, but is that the right business for Tesla? Probably not. I don't know if you could have gotten a useful battery in there. They should have built Giga Europe in Poland or Czech Republic. Germany has too much red tape. I think anywhere in the EU has too much red tape. I agree that Poland and Czech Republic would have been better, lower labor costs, probably less hassles, but no guarantee there wouldn't have been some kind of problem. Mark Potachnik says Cybercab will crush everything. So when we head to a robo-taxi world, Cybercab is going to dominate because it's so cost effective. 14.4 says, well, Aptera would if they could make one. No, Aptera wouldn't. Number one, the Aptera's price point is higher than the Model 3. The current price point of assuming they can actually make the car, their current plan to sell the car is more expensive than a Model 3. You want to buy a car that doesn't have crash protection, that only seats 2 people, that doesn't go fast, right? And you're going to pay more money for that than you're going to pay for a Model 3 that's got like one of the safest in crashes in the world and has 5 seats. No one's going to buy an Aptera 2-seater with 3 wheels and all that. No. What are you going to sell? 10,000 cars? Come on. Oh, you were joking. Thank you. Giga Korea. I think Korea was an option like Japan. I think the Koreans would have been less likely to embrace Tesla. I think they're even worse than the Japanese in being like, home market protected. Don't forget Japan. McDonald's is the biggest restaurant chain in Japan, and Coca-Cola is the biggest drinks company in Japan. Japan does sort of like American businesses when they consider them home theirs. Wouldn't that require a new production line? The Cyber small car wouldn't need that. Of course, the Cyber small car needs a new production line. They don't even have a production line yet. But that's what I'm saying. Like, invest some CapEx in maybe building a line for a Model YS. Sure. If you're going to invest $5 billion in Giga Berlin, how much would it cost for a Model YS line in China and a Model YS line in Texas? It probably costs less than that. Just a line. You have to build it. You already have the shell. Sell off? Let's see. We're going to see what's going on with the stock. Oh, it's down 1%. Come on. That's not meaningful. I got $447 a share. What do you got? I don't know. That's nothing. That's typical trivial movements. Am I getting OTA updates in Thailand? I get updates on the software, but not on FSD. I just got an update, actually. I got you take a photo booth thing, and I got like a whole bunch of Christmas. There's some Christmassy thing I got. I just got like 6 different things in the latest update. Normally my updates are like minor fixes, and I have no idea what they're doing. How do I think the SpaceX IPO will affect Tesla? I don't think the SpaceX IPO will have any effect on Tesla. If I understand correctly, the volume of shares that you can buy in SpaceX will be very small, like $30 billion. Tesla's market cap is 1.4 trillion. It's a drop in the bucket. I think the SpaceX IPO will be exciting, but I don't think it's going to affect Tesla stock in a meaningful way. Is it true that Japan has a tradition for KFC chicken for Christmas? I have not seen that or heard that. I'm not saying it's not true. I just don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen. Do Thai people go to KFC for Christmas, Ploy? No, not in Thailand anyway. 451. What? Wait. I got 447.12. I don't know. I don't see the stock moving that much, but maybe I'm behind. 447.34. I don't know. The stock is like up and down a tiny bit. Samir Patel says, I agree Germany was a bad place for a factory, still is, bureaucracy, red tape, and regulation, but also the prize is now autonomy. Yes, I agree. Looking at it today in 2025 or heading into 2026, doesn't matter. But if you look back at 2021 and you said, I'm Tesla, I'm going to invest $5 billion or $8 billion somewhere, what would you have done with it instead of investing in Giga Berlin? And I think that the practical reality is, look at today, it was pretty clearly a bad result. I don't say it's an awful result. They're probably going to make some money on the factory long term, but there's a lot of choices they could have made with that CapEx that would have had much better value. Now, the question is, should they have seen that in advance? Should they have recognized how difficult Europe would have been in so many different ways? Maybe. SpaceX upside is already priced in. There's no, what I don't understand. What's the upside of SpaceX IPO for Tesla? I don't get that. Thai people do like KFC very much, just not for Christmas. I think we were in Ao Nang. Was that this morning or yesterday? Yesterday, KFC was packed. The Ao Nang is the tourist area of Krabi, Thailand, and like KFC was packed. I'm like, wow, like you came to Thailand to eat KFC? I mean, they have like a Thai flavored rice chicken bowl, but Forlin says Redlich is not a German name. I believe it's pronounced Riedlich in German. It is a German name. I believe it means honest man. My family came from Poland, but had all my ancestors had German names. I have a home here, Samir Patel. Yeah, thank you for joining, Samir. Germany was a bad move when they started. Germany does have good engineers, though. The UK is generally recognized as the best place to do business in Europe. Well, not right now. I think Poland. If you were going to do Europe, Poland or maybe Serbia or Czech Republic or Romania, Hungary, there's a lot of choices in Europe that might have been better than Germany. But even still, if you put yourself under the EU umbrella, a lot of the problems are EU related. If you put yourself in Europe, you've got all these European communists and European interests who are trying to create problems. There's problems in Sweden or Norway with some union, IG Metall or something, interfering with Tesla's sales. There's all kinds of issues. Tesla will be there when EU fixes itself. I don't know that the whole point. I think there's a possibility that Europe will get better, but it doesn't look good so far. I looked into getting Polish citizenship, and my grandfather left too early. My grandfather was the last of the ancestors to come to the U.S., and he left. He would have had to have, I forget when there's a window, so I could have gotten Polish citizenship if he. But my ancestors, almost all my ancestors, were in the United States before 1900. He's the only one who was like 1903 or 1910 or something like that. I think the SpaceX IPO helping Tesla idea is based on SpaceX might buy Tesla chips. But the Tesla chips are like 4 years away. They haven't even started building a fab. How long is it going to take to build a fab? I know Elon built stuff quick, but I don't think they're going to build the fab until the AI7 chip. Right? I don't think they're going to build the fab for the AI5 or AI6 chips because they already have contracts to build those. So it's for the AI7 and AI8 chips, or maybe the AI9 chips. So you're talking 4 years away. SpaceX will very clearly use Optimus. There's no question about that. But I don't think SpaceX is going to use Optimus in the volume that will matter for Tesla revenue. If SpaceX buys 10,000 Optimus, that's trivial compared to what we're expecting from Optimus. South Korea would have been a great place for a factory. Koreans love Tesla. Is that true? I didn't know Koreans love Tesla. Is Poland better than Thailand? I have never been to Poland. I've been to Austria is the closest I've been to Poland. I don't know enough. I think labor cost is lower in Thailand. Regulatory burden is probably lower in Thailand. Thailand has an existing auto industry. I think Thailand's access to the Southeast Asian market might have been more important. Poland is close to the Ukraine conflict. Thailand, despite what you're hearing about Cambodia or Myanmar, Thailand is a low conflict place, so that's an advantage. But I'm not saying Thailand would have been a good choice or better than Poland, but I think any of them, in retrospect, would have been a better choice than Germany. Better question is how much to build a fab. That's a great question. I expect that Tesla building the fab that Elon wants to build, the first part of the fab will be $100 billion. He wants to build a really, really high output fab. And so there's going to be 10 fab lines. And the shell and the first line together will be in the ballpark of $100 billion. So I don't think they can build it until the Robotaxi cash machine starts spinning and maybe Optimus cash machine starts spinning. Will SpaceX grow as fast as Tesla? Great question. I think no, but it's really hard to... Here's the question I don't know the answer to. What is SpaceX's role in the development of AI and AGI? What's SpaceX's revenue story in there? Because I think SpaceX is effectively going to own a lot of AI data centers in space, right? So what's the value of that? Oh, Forlin says, so for me, I think Tesla's growth is like spectacular. And people have asked me, Warren, are you going to buy SpaceX in the IPO, or are you going to sell Tesla stock and buy SpaceX? Well, it's probably a year away. Let me wait and see what the IPO is. There'll be documents with the IPO. We'll get a better idea of the pricing. My gut hunch is that SpaceX, they've said the valuation will be 1.5 trillion. My gut hunch is that the SpaceX valuation, by the time it happens, will be 2 trillion or higher. And I think the demand for the stock, because they're only going to sell a limited amount of stock, the demand is going to be super high. So the price is going to be high. So like the higher that comes in, if it comes in at a $2 trillion valuation, you say, well, what's SpaceX's long-term potential? 10 trillion? Well, that's a 5X. I think Tesla's going to weigh more than 5X. Will I buy SpaceX stocks? I will probably buy some, but I might buy like, right now Tesla is like 96% of my portfolio, more if you count the options as extra. With NVIDIA being the other 4%. So would I sell 5% of my Tesla stock and buy SpaceX stock? Maybe. I'm really looking to get into Neuralink, to be honest. Neuralink is the company I want to invest in. Neuralink's going to like 10,000x. Boring Company's going to 1,000x. Those are the investments I want to get into are Boring Company and Neuralink. B says, I plan to buy SpaceX, but not at IPO. I'll wait a week or so. I don't know that that's a good strategy for SpaceX. I want to be clear about this. There's going to be such a small amount of stock allocated. Like they're talking about $30 billion worth of stock on a 1.5. That's 2% of the company is going to be sold. Like 30 billion is nothing, right? There's $1.4 trillion of investments in space and Tesla. If 1% of Tesla shareholders sold their stock and bought SpaceX, that would be a demand of $14 billion. Just that, right? So I think, and that depends on what Tesla's trading at the time. AI data centers in space is such an odd idea. Heat dissipation is a huge problem with terrestrial data centers. It's an odd idea until you dive into it. And people are like, well, how are they going to dissipate heat in space? Like, well, they have Starlink satellites that generate heat and they dissipate heat. Why would that be a different problem than it is for Starlink, which is obviously functioning well? It's so hilarious to see people like, well, that's not going to work because they're going to dissipate heat. Like they're going to put them on the same basic chassis as Starlink. They're going to take out the phased array antennas and put on some extra chips. How big of a difference is that? Like, I'm not saying it's not different, but I don't think that's a huge engineering challenge. Google owns 7% of space. I just saw somebody wrote about how Google owning, buying, Google got like a 50x on its SpaceX investment. SpaceX might be a 30-year play versus a 10 to 15-year play like Tesla. Yeah, I think that the challenge for me with SpaceX has always been, how do you value Mars? Mars might be like insanely valuable, but I don't know how to value that. And I think Tesla might be a longer play than you realize. I mean, like if Tesla's going to be part of the same stuff. I'll never sell my Tesla stock. I have other holdings that can be liquidated. That's fine. Yeah. Tesla's a 3 to 5 year play. No. Tesla's a 10-year play. If you look at, this is a big thing I would say, look at an Apple stock chart for like the last 20 years. Okay. In 2007, the iPhone's introduced, and there's a slow climb over like 4-6 years where like 4X's. And there are people like, I got a 4X and they sell. What happened? A 23X after that. Right? Like people, you think that that like 5 years have gone by and like you've gotten all the gains. Like, no, a lot of the gains are coming later. The market is not going to recognize the value of it will go up. Tesla stock will go up 2X, 4X. I don't think it's going to go up significantly until 2027. That's my next video. But when it goes up, it's first going to go up like double or triple. It needs to 10X, 20X, 50X. Right? So it's going to be like, it's going to double or triple and a bunch of people are going to sell and they're going to be like, and then they're going to be like, holy shit, what happened? Because it's going to 10X or 20X after that. They're going to list SpaceX because they're about to roll out a load of data capable satellites. Why else would they need a load? I think they want the load of cash so they can, I think Elon said it, so they can build the AI data center satellites. I think that Matthew Herges says it's using today's Earth data centers isn't viable. He's planning a new type of data center. He's planning to use Starlink satellites similar to Starlink, the V3 satellites that are coming for Starship. Replace the antennas that are used, or most of the antennas that are used for communicating with cell phones and Starlink antennas, with more AI chips. So you have like 100 AI 8 chips on a satellite or something like that. And it generates somewhat more heat and they have to do something. And then those satellites communicate by laser link with the Starlink satellites orbiting Earth that then communicate down to Earth. It's a very different strategy. And they're going to be in sun synchronous orbit, which means they orbit the Earth about 600 kilometers, which is not very far. But they're in sunlight all the time. And so they're able to generate electricity the whole time. The mockery is not needed. A rack of NVIDIA generates 120 kilowatts of heat, which is basically the power the ISS generates on a good day. Well, I don't think they're going to use a rack of NVIDIA. I don't know what they're going to put in space, but I think you shouldn't underestimate how much heat Starlink generates. Like, what do you think the phased array antennas do? They have solar, it's going to be some additional cost to make it work, but I think it's just an engineering problem. 3 to 5 years before we can make really, really good money. Long term, it's a 50-year play, but I'm not that young. I think that my prediction is that 2027 is the year Tesla stock really starts to go up. 2x to 5x, something like that, 2027, 2028. But then you go out to 2035 and you're like 20x, 50x, something like that. Elon owns an estimated 42% of SpaceX. He also holds about 79% of the company's voting control. Yep. Yeah, let's say Elon owns 40% of SpaceX and SpaceX hits a $1.5 trillion valuation or a $2 trillion valuation. The people think Elon's going to be a trillionaire because of Tesla and his, compensation package. Elon's going to be a trillionaire before he gets a single share from the comp package. Forland says Thailand will not approve Starlink. You want Elon will invest there in a factory. So, Thailand, Starlink was not, when we're talking about a decision that was made in 2021, not a decision made in 2025. So Starlink wasn't really anywhere in 2021. And had Tesla built a factory in Thailand, they might have had better relations with the Thai government, and maybe Starlink would have been approved. I don't know. But I agree that there's issues with Thailand as a place to do business, that maybe it's not the best choice. But I don't think it could have done worse than Germany. That's my point. Hit the change what a data center means and is. I'm a data center engineer and I've been doing this for 20 years. I think Elon has spelled out what the plan is. They're going to do AI inference processing in sun synchronous orbit, and the AI satellites the AI satellites will communicate with Starlink and communicate back to Earth, and so you'll get a fairly quick inference result doing that. Long term, they're going to be launching AI training satellites into orbits around the heliocentric orbits around the sun. Tesla pay deal makes Elon a multi-trillionaire. Elon might be a multi-trillionaire before the pay deal pays him. Long-term Tesla YouTubers should get a special deal on space. So I hear a lot of people saying this. Yeah, I think you mean long-term Tesla shareholders rather than YouTubers. Elon has said he wants Tesla shareholders to get early access to the IPO. I don't know how viable that is. I would love it because I would take advantage of it, but my gut is that's not going to happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. It's just my gut says he might want to do it, but he won't be able to pull it off. Okay. So anyway, I covered the key points. The key points of this video were that I think Giga Berlin was a mistake. In retrospect, in hindsight, it's easy for me to say it now. I didn't say it in 2021. I was equally wrong. I think fundamentally there's been a lot of problems in Europe that have made it difficult for Giga Berlin to be a success. And I think there are alternatives that if you went back to 2021 with a time machine, you said, hey, build Giga Osaka instead, do more investment in China instead, instead of Berlin, do it in Poland or Serbia or Hungary or Czech Republic. There's a lot of alternatives that might have been better choices. I don't know. I think Elon actually has a personal feeling of connection to Germany as well. Only Elon and SpaceX with Starship can do AI data center satellites. All the other data centers and space ideas are dumb. SpaceX's big advantage is low cost launch. Blue Origin will get to somewhat lower cost, The other big advantage is SpaceX knows how to manufacture Starlink satellites, and therefore the Starlink platform will be used for AI data center satellites, and they can manufacture satellites at very low cost. So be less wrong. Yep. So I want to thank again. I want to thank everybody. I need to get ready for bed. I actually had a very long day. A great workout today. My VO2 max. I'm not sure this is a reliable or verified measurement, but my VO2 max tested out at 46.7, and I actually didn't perform that well. I think I could have done better and maybe gotten over 50. VO2 max that high for a man 59 years old is like an amazing result. So I did some great strength training. Everything's going really well. Thank you, Stephen. Life is going really well. We're going to go on a road trip in a few days to Bangkok. Spend a couple weeks in Bangkok pursuing family issues. That's a long story, a positive story. So I hope to have some great news to report to you next year. We'll see how it goes. Thanks everybody so much, and thank you to Mark for moderating the chat. Bye bye everybody.